Thank you, Rob. You know what? These guys really work hard to keep money in the pockets of our members. And it's a testament, the Google reviews of 4.9. Our members love these guys. And especially in these times, economic hard times, right? It's important to have a choice like Union Power, and thank you for what you do. Next, I'd like to welcome Andre Boulerize, Member of Parliament for La Patrie, Deputy Leader of the NDP and Housing Critic, who will introduce our next speaker. Mr. Boulerize.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hi everybody. My name is Alexandre Boulerize. I'm a Member of Parliament from Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie in Montreal. I'm really happy to be with you today. Je suis vraiment content d'être avec vous ici aujourd'hui. C'est tout un honneur de pouvoir être là puis de parler d'enjeux qui sont importants pour des milliers de travailleurs et de travailleuses un peu partout au pays. So, I was until recently the labor critic. I'm now the housing critic. So we're going to build some houses and affordable houses for a lot of people in Canada. That's very important. Just want to, in 1 minute, tell you that we are in a very special situation politically here in Ottawa. And you are playing a very important role, you know, shaping and deciding the policies of this country, representing your members and defending their rights and their working conditions. And we are, as a party in Parliament, in a situation to also make a difference with a minority government. Because with the minority Liberal government, if you add, of course, the NDP caucus, you have a majority. So that's why we negotiated a deal with this minority government in a historical opportunity to make real changes to improve the life of many workers and Canadians. You know, the NDP is from labor and for labor. It's in our DNA. And we provided with this minority government important new policies and change. Paid sick days, we provided it. Anti-scab legislation, it's in committee right now for the first time in federal history, defending workers' rights. Dental care is coming. Pharmacare, we have a legislation. So we are making a difference. We were talking about ITCs, but not just ITCs. ITCs in exchange of good working conditions, good wages, and good paying union jobs. So, c'est mon grand plaisir et mon honneur de présenter mon chef et mon ami. So it's my great pleasure and honor to present to you the leader of the NDP, Mr. Jagmeet Singh.
We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. 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 We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. 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 Look how the sun now raising up, and the crowd now waking up. The atmosphere.
Thanks for that music. It's our walkout music right there. How y'all doing? Good. An honor to be here. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much for being here, Jagmeet. And you've been coming to our conference for a number of years, and we've had a few fireside chats. And over the time since you've been leader, I think since 2017, you've had a few life changes. Yeah, you're married and you have 2 children, and you're still committed to your party and to changing Canada. And congratulations for continuing to do that as you go through some of these life changes.
Oh,
so a real round of applause
thank
for Jagmeet. You recently had a daughter,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. She's 4 months old. Yeah.
4 months old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jagmeet's really committed to his family, because I had a call with him one time and he was actually burping his 4-year-old daughter on his shoulder. So, I wanted to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
And Alexandra did a good intro there in terms of all the different initiatives that you've been working on. and through this historical supply and confidence agreement with the government. And we're pleased, obviously, with the ITCs, and we're pleased with the prevailing wage component of that, anti-scab legislation, pharmacare, dental care. There's all kinds of initiatives that are happening. Is the supply and confidence agreement, in your view, still working for the NDP? Is there more that could be done, or are you satisfied with where it's at right now?
I tell you, I mean, New Democrats are never satisfied. We always want more. So we always want more for people. We always want more for workers. I would say we've been able to use our power, and for us, it was always a question of what's the point of being elected? What do you do with the power that you've been entrusted? And I think of that as a very serious question. Like it's a big honor for me. It's a big deal. And I carry a lot of responsibility on my shoulders that what do we do with the power that we have in a minority government? So for us, we always wanted to make sure that we use our power for working people. That was always, there's no debate about that. And I would say the deal has given us an opportunity to force the government to do things they wouldn't otherwise have done. There's no question about that. I would tell you that things like anti-scab legislation, we are a workers' party, we are founded by workers, we will always talk about how we can give unions more power, because more powerful unions means more powerful paychecks for workers. There's no other way about it. Companies aren't going to give workers better wages on their own. People have to fight for it. And the best way to fight for good wages are with strong unions. So that's kind of been our, we don't beat around the bush with that. We're very straightforward about that. So so the agreement has given us power, but it's given also an insight into government. And I can tell you, no one has had a closer look at government other than those that are in government than me. Like I've seen the power that the federal government has, and I've seen how hard it was for us to force them to make decisions that are in the best interest of working people. So even the investment tax credits, that was a fight. We said, we got to make sure there's strings attached to these tax credits. It can't just be a blank check. And most governments have always wanted blank checks. That's been their approach. They're more comfortable giving a blank check to a corporation, and they hope that that'll result in good opportunities. And we know that doesn't actually happen. I remember going to a picket or a big strike action in London, Ontario during the Harper years, where a Caterpillar subsidiary got a bunch of money, and then they shut down that factory.
Yep.
And closed shop and left and went to Mexico, actually. And so we are very upset at the idea of giving blank checks. We want to see strings attached. So that's something we've been fighting for, and the investment tax credits tied to prevailing wages, tied to good jobs, and tied to union work is really essential for us. But I can tell you, we've been able to get things done. I want to get the job done. I want to get the work that we started finished. So I want to finish that legislation, the anti-scab legislation. I want to finish that. I want to finish pharmacare. I want to finish dental care. But I want to finish that, and then I want to put to Canadians a choice. Because I know in the next election, it's going to be a change election. And I want to put to Canadians, I want to put to all of you, what would Canada look like with a prime minister dedicated to working people every single decision that he makes? Imagine a Labour prime minister. Imagine a New Democrat prime minister. I want to be that for you. I want to be the next New Democrat, Labour, working people prime minister.
Well, thank you very much for that, Jagmeet. And we certainly recognize through the supply and confidence agreement and the minority situation in Ottawa, the pressure and moral suasion that you've been able to bring to the government because of the minority situation. So many of these progressive measures, I think, are the result of that dynamic. And now we're at a point, we just had a panel here on investment tax credits, and we've identified over $100 billion in projects. So prevailing wage is great, apprenticeship requirements are great, but we need this investment tax credit legislation across the line in order for these proponents to make these investments and then put our contractors and members to work. Bill C-59 is in the House right now, which is the investment tax credits legislation. It's in committee today. It's going through line by line by line. Can you assure us that you will get this passed and get it passed before the House rises this summer?
I can tell you that our commitment is to make sure that when it comes to investment tax credits, our priority is going to be making sure that we've got strings attached for workers, good wages, prevailing wages, that we're fighting to make sure that this supports good union jobs. Because there is no benefit in giving a tax credit unless it is directly going to mean that your members the men and women in this room and the folks that you represent are getting jobs. Otherwise, what's the point? And so that's going to be our focus, and we're going to work as hard as possible to make sure the legislation is as strong as possible for working people, and we are very prepared to do whatever it takes to get it passed as quickly as possible, as long as it's something that actually is going to benefit workers.
Right. Well, for sure. For sure. We want to make sure, and we want to emphasize, and we appreciate your advocacy on that. And we want to make sure, with your support and the NDP's support, that it doesn't face unnecessary delays in the parliamentary process, because it's critically important for us. There's projects in Alberta, there's projects in Newfoundland and Labrador, there's projects in every province, and are just waiting for that to happen. So I appreciate those encouraging words that you will work to get it passed as quick as possible. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and as you probably know, we had the Prime Minister here yesterday, and we have a situation in Windsor, and we are fully supportive of EV battery plant investments and all the supply chain and how it helps with mines. And this is a benefit to all of Canada. I mean, the plants are going to be in Ontario, predominantly in Quebec, but it's a benefit to all of Canada, so we're supportive of that. But our challenge is specifically is the use of foreign workers when our members are available and trained to go to work and do the job. And not only in that example at Nexstar, but also we have problems and challenges with the temporary foreign worker program in Lower Mainland BC, where the riding where you represent, and other areas across Canada as well. So would you commit to using your power in a minority situation to make the necessary changes to the temporary foreign worker program, such as before a temporary foreign worker program permit is granted to a construction company, our union halls are consulted to see if we have labor available to do that work. Would you commit to that?
Yes. Let me give you some more details. Absolutely. First, Sean, I think you should get some credit. Folks should know Sean has been on the phone with me regularly. Anytime there's an issue that comes up, he gives me the heads up and says, hey, this is a concern that we have, and these are some concerns that we want to address, particularly around workers getting the short shrift. And so I appreciate the advocacy you do for your members. I got to say, my principle around temporary foreign workers, it is a last resort. It should not be the default. It shouldn't be the first choice. It is a last resort. And absolutely, the priority has to be we exhaust every option for jobs in Canada first before we even consider temporary foreign workers. I mean, that should be the principle. And in fact, we separate the issue of immigration generally with temporary foreign workers. I actually got the idea from a building trades organization, a union, that said, when it comes to bringing workers in, even as immigrants, instead of having those workers go through the employer, who can often exploit the worker, who can often abuse the worker or take advantage of them, let's have workers come through union halls. And if they're coming through a union hall, the union can actually ensure that they get good wages, they have continued work. It's a better way to keep the conditions of work up for everybody. So if we do need immigration when it comes to work, it should go through union halls, not through the employer. I think that's one good strategy. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to temporary foreign workers, this is my concern with the other party's approach. We've seen that Poilievre is making a lot of noise about this. First of all, it's trade deals that the Conservatives signed that even open up the door to a lot of these temporary foreign workers coming in this way. So it's a bit rich that he's now making a concern about it. But secondly, if you see his approach to the current working committee, he would rather blow it all up than actually get to solutions that are good for workers. He'd rather jeopardize the deal itself than actually make changes that actually benefit workers, because he's not actually in it for working people. Mm-hmm. He wants to create a mess, create drama for the government. I want to fight the government to make decisions that are better for workers. That's the difference. I don't just want to arbitrarily fight with Trudeau. I want to fight Trudeau to make sure he's getting decisions in place that benefit working people. Pierre just wants to fight Trudeau to make him look bad, to blow up contracts, to create drama, to create controversy, just for that, not actually for the benefit of workers. And so you'll see my approach will be in committee, let's ensure that workers are getting the best deal here. Let's ensure that workers are the priority in Canada. Let's ensure that any money that's being sent, and we're spending significant money and we support that, but it's got to go towards ensuring that workers in Canada are first priority with the jobs, that they're good jobs, that they're union jobs, and that they're here to last.
Thank you. Well, on that, let's just unpack this immigration temporary foreign worker program a little bit. One of the challenges is that immigration has its own department, different ministry, and the TFW program is from a separate ministry, ESDC versus immigration. So that creates all kinds of communication challenges between the different ministries. And we like your approach, and we've had conversations about that before around immigration. And our general approach to this is that we'd like to find a way in which we can make the immigration program and the temporary foreign worker program where warranted work for us.
That's right.
So on the immigration side, as you rightly point out, right now you have to be an employer to sponsor someone to come into the country. So when those people come into the country, we don't have a lot of touch points with them. Often they're exploited. Oftentimes they end up working on underground economy, which hurts regular Canadians going to work. And so we have recommended that unions be considered an employer through a joint apprenticeship training trust for those unions who want to or are interested and would like to bring in these immigrants to sponsor them. And the other thing is that most of us in this room are sons and daughters of immigrants.
Absolutely.
You know, many tradespeople came from overseas to Canada, you know, in the 1800s and then the 50s and 60s. So we're pro-immigration. We're just not pro-immigration that impacts and takes away legitimate jobs, the temporary foreign worker program for Canadians. And so what we're wondering is, because these issues have been long-standing and so hard to unpack, is if you would support the creation of a tripartite body with labor and government and owners to look at this labor supply issue across Canada for construction and see how we can leverage everything we have locally in all of our union halls across Canada and with the immigration program to meet those labor supply challenges. We need to get people in the room to solve this.
Well, I can tell you proof of concept. When we fought in the Sustainable Jobs Act, before, the government's version of that did not include labor at the seat of the table. There was no seat for labor in the legislation. So we forced the government to make it in the law that labor had to have a seat at the table. If we're talking about sustainable jobs, how can we talk about those jobs without workers being at the table? So just to prove that this is something we believe in, we did that with the Sustainable Jobs Act. We got that legislation amendment and now that legislated amendment. And so now workers are legislated to be at the table to discuss the future of work in our country, which should apply to any decision around work. What we've often seen is if we leave the decision to government and to owners, to the businesses, they're going to make a decision that benefits the business and that doesn't necessarily benefit workers. They'll find ways that will cut corners, cut costs, and they will use things like temporary foreign workers when there are Canadian workers actually available. So that's why I agree full-heartedly with any solution. If it impacts workers, workers should be at the table. And that shouldn't come as a surprise that I believe that, because we are, and I am, a leader of a party that is a workers' party. We will always look at every decision through the lens, does this benefit a worker? And not just any worker, we will always look at it through a lens, how does this strengthen the power of unions? Because we fundamentally believe stronger unions are better for working people, always.
You know, sticking with that support for labor, which the NDP is, you know, it's your DNA for sure. And the recent budget had unprecedented investments in housing, rightfully so. There's also large investments in defense spending. And we have seen examples through the ITCs where the government is foregoing revenue and have labor conditions we call labor conditionality attached to those investments. Can you see a way where we can get prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements required through labor conditionality, apprenticeship requirements on other investments made by the government, in housing and in defense, for example?
We can, and one of the ways to do that is something that the CBTU has been a big advocate of, is community benefit agreements.
Right.
We fundamentally believe in this tool. It can be applied anytime there's an investment, really. Anytime there's big investments at the federal level, we can always have a requirement for a CBA, community benefit agreement, and stipulate clearly that in that community benefit agreement, we want to see apprenticeships. We want to see union jobs. We want to see good wages. We can include things like prevailing wages. It is a strong vehicle to ensure if we're spending public money anyways, this is public money that everyone has contributed to, that public money should go to a public benefit. And I can't think of a better public benefit than making sure those investments benefit the local community, hire local workers, and in the long term, train them up so they can become union, they can become journeymen, they can become Red Seal. Let's invest in our own workers, and let's ensure that every dollar that we spend that's public goes towards workers in Canada and building up their future.
Thank you. So on the housing front, and the investments, as I said earlier, are very much warranted, and it's really around affordability, the pressures that Canadians in this room are experiencing on our finances with high interest rates and inflation, challenges for younger people to get to work, and mental health issues, and there's a real sense of, or a preponderance of, anxiousness amongst Canadians. And this anxiousness has expressing itself, and I think similarly in the United States, is expressing itself in a polarization of a divergent of views of what a future would look like for Canada. The rise of populism, it's often described as, which is really anti-government, which has got different elements to it, which is really threatening to the kind of view we have of ourselves as Canadians. And these folks have legitimate beefs and they have legitimate views, but this polarization overall is not healthy. Does this worry you? Does this trouble you?
Yeah, for sure. It absolutely worries me, and I think about the solution a lot. I think first off, there are legitimate reasons why people are feeling frustrated. Like you mentioned, we got people that are looking at how much money they're bringing in, looking at their bills, looking at their rent, looking at their groceries, and saying, I just don't know how I'm going to make it. And folks are drowning. People with good wages. I met lots of folks who have good jobs, good wages, saying, I don't know how people with lower wages do it. I'm making good money, and I can barely keep this all going. Like, how do I do it? So when you got those conditions where people are feeling the struggle, and I would say the two big things that I hear about is high grocery costs and high housing, whether it's rent or mortgage. So those are the two areas I hear, housing and groceries. So you got people feeling that, and then they see a government that often feels out of touch, right? They don't feel like Justin Trudeau gets what they're going through, and that fuels that polarization. When someone ignores it, says, that's fine, it's better, it's worse off in other countries, which may be true, but it's not the right response if someone's saying, hey, I'm hurting right now. So you got that response, and then you have someone, Pierre Poilievre, who purposely wants to lean into the division and is not actually providing real solutions, wants that division to be inflamed and wants to pit people against each other. Questions things like, let's attack the media, let's attack court systems, let's attack experts, purposely dividing and getting rid of any of the common ground. Like we would normally, if I got a problem, I'm going to go to the expert. I'm going to ask the expert their advice. Attacking kind of the basic, truly the common sensing, attacking that and really going contrary to that. Given all that, I feel like I have a really big responsibility to bring people together. So one is acknowledge their frustration. Yeah, it does feel like the system is rigged against you. It kind of has been rigged against you. In housing, the housing market works amazing if you're a rich investor, big developer. Doesn't work so well if you're a young person starting off, if you're a young family, if you're a senior. It's not working for you. That is a problem. We've got to fix that. And then we got to acknowledge the problem, then we got to provide real solutions that bring people together. And I believe that we can solve these things. I know there's solutions. In the housing front, we know I've been to countries, I've gone to different places to see the solutions out there. There are real solutions. We got to build, for sure. We also have to build a variety of homes. We got to build things with the private sector, of course, and incentivize and encourage that. We also have to build some alternatives. We got to build purpose-built rental. We've got to build cooperative housing. We've got to build not-for-profit housing. We have to have a mix of housing. Every country I've been to where they've got this thing handled, they've had a mix of solutions, where they've got real options for young people to live in the downtown core of a city where it's not-for-profit, or it's a co-op, or it's some other form of really affordable housing where a young person can rent and then eventually save up to buy if they want to. But you need real options. And so far, all I've been hearing from the other two is that I'll just build. But we got to build specific things. We got to build affordable. We got to build cooperative. We got to build not-for-profit. And we got private development. We need all of it. But it can't just be one solution. It's got to be all of those things. And that's what I'm going to try to put to people. I believe that there's real solutions out there. I think if we give people genuine solutions, genuinely concerned with what people are going through, hear them out, speak to them like real people and say, hey, we've got these solutions. Don't minimize them and don't give them cheap slogans as a way to fix things that are really complex. But take people seriously and say, hey, we can fix these things. There are real solutions out there. Let's get together, let's get to work, and let's fix these things. I think we can bring back hope. I think we can absolutely give back people that confidence that we can build a country where our kids can have a bright future. I want to do that. That's the job that I want to do.
Thank you. Thank you for that. In the brief time that we have left, Jagmeet, is I want to personally thank you. This past few years, we've achieved more for Canada's building trade unions as a labor movement in terms of progressive legislation than we have in any other 5-year period of history of the labor movement in Canada. And the recent bill, which is going through the House now, on anti-scab legislation, is one of those landmark pieces of legislation which we hope will be, once it's passed in Ottawa, will be extended to all of the other provinces that don't have it. So I wanted just to thank you for your support for that anti-scab legislation.
Thank you. If I could tell you on a personal note, we were talking as a party. This is something that we've introduced for decades.
Yeah.
We've been introducing anti-scab legislation for decades, and we were looking back and we saw, there were a lot of hurdles. This is something that Jack Layton introduced before Matt Broadbent wanted to bring in. And so I felt a lot of honor that I was able to be the first ever to ensure that we have government legislation on this. But if I could take a little shot here, I want to be really clear. While you might have saw Pierre Poilievre support it this time, he's a flip-flopper on this. He voted against it 8 times in the past. He's voted against unions. He wanted to make it harder for people to join a union. He made it clear when he was back in 2013, he said proudly that he was the first federal elected official to bring right-to-work legislation to push for that in Canada. So if folks, in this room, you all know what right-to-work means. It's anti-union legislation. And so I just want to remind folks, your friend, your real friends are there with you always, not when they're trying to maneuver themselves to maybe win an election. Your real friends are there always. And your real friends are with you when you're in a fight. And I'll put to you, when you're in a fight, you're not going to see Pierre Poilievre or Justin Trudeau at a picket line. You're going to see me there. I've been at picket lines. I will always be at picket lines because I'm always with the workers. And I just want to make it clear on this anti-scab legislation, it's a big deal. I want to get it done. Anything that jeopardizes getting it done, any attempt to stop it now, puts at risk a lot of workers. And it's not just, like you said, it's not just at the federal level. We're hoping if we can establish this federally, we can set the precedent to have this done in every province in our country. There are some provinces that have it, which is amazing, BC and Quebec, but we want to see this extended across the country. We never want to see another scab take the job of a worker. When workers are on strike, that's a tough choice. You know this, you know how tough it is. To go on strike, it's a big deal. To go on strike, it's a very difficult thing for the worker, for the family. And when scabs come in, they undermine the power of working. And so what this legislation is really about is, for us, New Democrats, is a fundamental position that we believe in, that we need more power for working people to demand better wages, to fight for those better wages. And so I want to see this work done. I want to keep on fighting to make sure it's done. I want you to know you can always count on me. Anything related to working people, anything related to unions, we're going to fight for that. And I know we're going to get pressure from big bosses who don't like this. The big bosses are going to push back. They don't want anti-scab legislation because they love the scabs. They use the scabs. We're against that, and I call them scabs too. You're going to always hear me say scabs. I don't really use replacement workers as much. I call them what they are. Right? Just how it is. Just the way it is. But yeah, this is really important to us. We want to get this done. There's really important work that we have to do at the federal level. And then, like I said, there's going to be an election. I want to be your prime minister. I'm telling you seriously, I want to be your prime minister. I want to be a labor prime minister. I want to be a prime minister that works for working people every single day. That's my only vision. That's my only goal. A Canada that puts workers first.
Mr. Singh, yep. Mr. Singh, Jagmeet, on behalf of the Canadian Executive Board, all of our delegates, and the 600,000 members we represent coast to coast, thank you very much for your commitment to labor. Thank you very much for your support of all of our initiatives. Thank you very much for your service to Canada. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all.